Hey everyone, it's Mariah. I hope you're having a great day. I want to wish everybody happy holidays, whatever holiday it is that you're celebrating this time of year. So I just got back from visiting with my family for the holidays yesterday, and this morning I went to go receive a cranial sacral session from one of my dear friends who is Jewish. And I had sent text messages to a bunch of people on Christmas to say Merry Christmas. And I asked my friend, I was like, did you have any issues or take any offense when I sent you a Merry Christmas text message? And he's like, no. I appreciate that you were thinking of me. And it's not that I was trying to push Christmas on him or that I was not trying to honor the fact that he's Jewish. It was just I was sending text messages to loved ones and I didn't want to discriminate. And for me, I grew up in a place where I would say it was culturally Christian. Easter, Christmas were things that I knew about. We went to church on Christmas, but I wasn't really religious. We didn't go to Sunday church, didn't go to Sunday school. I think the first time I actually fully read the Bible was when I was in college in my religious studies degree. And so, I've always had an interesting relationship with Christmas because it's there. Everybody celebrates it. I love Christmas decorations and ornaments, and I think it's a really pretty time of year. I do exchange gifts with my family, but the whole biblical celebration of it is not something that I personally celebrate. My dad made a funny comment this year. He wanted to tell people Merry Santa Christmas instead of Merry Christmas, to honor, I'm celebrating this time of year, not necessarily Merry Jesus Christmas, where he's celebrating, the birth of Jesus. And I think that's an important thing, is it's like, for people who celebrate Christmas as the birth of Jesus, that's wonderful. That's an important thing. But there's a lot of people that I think that are like me that celebrate this time of year, but are not necessarily culturally or religiously celebrating the holiday. And it's just an important distinction. But this really brought me into the thought of cycles and checking in on cycles and really this spiral of times of year. And for me, it's like I don't think that Christmas is going anywhere in my life. I've thought about not celebrating it, but it's still an important time of year. I see my family almost every year, if I'm not out of the country and traveling. So maybe I see my family most years, every other year, depending on my travel schedule. But it's a good check-in. How am I doing with myself? How am I communicating with my family? How am I creating relationships with my family? What issues are coming up? How am I feeling? How am I celebrating this time of year with my community? Who am I getting together with? So what communities are really most important for me at this time of year? And how is it different this year than it was last year or the year before or the year before that, right? And so I can really look at my life instead of looking at it as a cycle, because a cycle is on a single plane, right? I like to look at it as a spiral. I'm coming back to the same point, but there's a different depth. There's a different knowledge. I'm a year wiser, a year older, a year different. So the same time of year, the same patterns, the same things happen, but I'm different. So my perspective of those same things happening is inherently different. And so I have several points at these times throughout the year where they serve as a important check-in to me because I do similar things every time of the year. And so, setting up the Christmas tree, and Christmas is it's a big one. I love setting up the Christmas tree. It's super pretty. It's fun. Burning Man. Burning Man's a really big one. And, every year Burning Man's different. Like, no 2 years are alike. At the same time, how I show up is different. How I prepare, what I bring, who I choose to show up as, who I camp with, what I spend my time doing at the event. So there's all these different things that are different about my experience. And obviously, the art and everything about the burn is always different. But there's enough the same where I look at it, it's like, did I find balance this year? And if not, why? Where were my greatest struggles? Where were my greatest joys? What lessons did I learn? And what lessons did I learn in previous years that I did much better on this year? And there's other times of the year that I like to check in. My birthday is usually one of them. In the springtime, don't have a lot of huge ones in the springtime. Equinox is always a big one for me. Apogea, so Colorado Regional Burning Man event in June, is a big check-in time for me. New Year's is its own check-in, which is different than solstice, different than Christmas, different than, for some reason, that mid-late December is very different than January 1st, as far as in the check-ins that I have. But I think it's important that we have these certain patterns that we do every year. I don't have family reunions. I've never been to any of my class reunions, and I don't know that I'm going to, and I don't know that I'm not, but I haven't, and I don't know what that's going to look like for me. But what are the times in your life where you check in? What are the patterns? What are those places that you do every year where you can notice this spiral, notice this deepening? Is there a book that you read every year? Is there a particular song, a concert that you go to every year? I've been going to Grateful Dead concerts for many, many years. But at least in my lifetime, they've never been they've been the Grateful Dead, but I've never seen them with Jerry. He passed before I saw my first show. And there are different times of the year, so for me that's not a great check-in. But I know certain people, there's certain events that they go to every year. There's a certain Christmas party that I go to every year that's important. There's the Parade of Lights in Denver is important. I check in in May when I go up to the Pine Ridge Reservation and do my service work up there. But it's, what are these things? And for a while I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to branch out. I need to do different things because I do the same thing year and year and year. But what I'm realizing is that the more that I do the same things, the more depth I have with each of these things. And the more I know the things, the better I am able to understand how I am interacting in that space. I know the space so well that if the space and the container is more or less the same or similar every year, then my experience has a lot more to do with me and how I'm interfacing with it and how I'm interacting with it. And so it really teaches me how to check in with myself and how to look at how I'm showing up at that time in that event. And then I can compare it to previous years and just look at it and say, how is this different and how is it similar? And so I can see where I've changed and where I have room to change and room to grow. And so I encourage you just to take this time and think about it. What are the things that you do year in and year out? What do you constantly do? And then how can you use those patterns, those rituals, to track time, to track change within you? And then once you can identify those, and then you can start to use the pattern to project backwards or remember back in time, you can also use those times to kind of project forward in time and say, okay, this is how it was this year. And then these are the things that I struggled with this year. And these are the steps I'm going to do to change it just for this one instant. And these are the things that I would really like to change just because I have a desire to change. And so when we can look those and apply them to these specific events that happen, these rituals, then we can say, okay, I'm doing this for this one thing, but you have an entire year to think about it. And so it's actually going to seep into your entire year, and you're going to change on so many other levels. But you don't realize the change because it's like you're just preparing for this small instance in time. And so the huge change happens without you even paying attention. And so it just happens because you've invited in the change, you've identified the change, and then you've created the action throughout the year, the learning, the lessons throughout the year in order to have that change happen for you in that cyclical event for the next year. So I hope you have an absolutely beautiful holiday season this year, and play around with this idea of spirals and cycles and holidays and ritual. Have a lovely, lovely day. Bye.